Okay, so cool. I'm going to talk about the ecosystem itself and what I mean by this ecosystem. Even though you probably understand what I mean, but um, for example, sake, I'll talk about what we have now. NOVAEO operates what's basically a single vertically integrated entity that has about 7 or 8 health and wellness product brands. Um, It has a manufacturing, formulation, warehousing, and fulfillment facility. That's all one facility in Tampa, Florida, able to formulate and manufacture grocery items, foods, dietary supplements, and cosmetics. We have all kinds of business back-end functionality, like 24/7 customer service, legal, admin, recruiting, so staffing, all these various things. And then we have some basic marketing functions that could definitely be, much stronger with some pronounced leadership, like creative and, our Amazon marketing. We have like some pretty weak social media marketing that we do. But so basically, if we take all of these functions, and instead of having one vertically integrated entity, we parcel out each individual function, including each individual product brand. So take those 7 or 8 product brands and that are all in this one Lay Luna LLC entity and separate them out into each their own entity. Take the manufacturing, the warehouse, we always call it the warehouse. Take that and have that be its own entity. The customer service, let that be a customer service agency. And basically just parcel out all these different functionalities so that each one can be its own autonomous entity. But basically everything is in support of each other. Everything is symbiotic of each other. And so as we grow, in each of these entities is trying to grow itself. Now, currently, the easiest way for the manufacturing arm, for example, to grow is for the product brands to grow, because the more the product brands grow, the more manufacturing those product brands need. But as we establish leadership, we parcel out the manufacturing arm, establish leadership there, like a CEO. Well, that CEO is going to want to actually brand the warehouse and then look for third-party clientele while also supporting the brands. The customer service, same kind of thing. It's going to continue to support the brands. It's going to continue to grow as the brands grow. But if it has space on its plate, fuck it, go ahead and look for some third-party clientele as well. And the beauty of each one of these service functions, looking for its own third-party clientele, is as soon as it brings in a client, it's pretty easy to push that client around to all these other functionalities. So every single time that we bring in a client from any direction, from any one function, it's going to be pretty easy to move that client around and get additional value created from this overall ecosystem. So ultimately, that's actually even going to be another entity in itself, is an entity that is just looking for clients to bring into the ecosystem. And that entity will get paid for bringing in clients. And the more value that the client provides to the ecosystem, the more valuable that entity ultimately is. And so basically, we're going to keep on just stacking on more functionalities via more entities as we grow and grow and grow, as we find a need for them. So for example, right now, these brands are predominantly Amazon focused. Well, we want to get not off Amazon, but we want to grow beyond Amazon. So one way to grow would be funnels. So let's either build, and this is the thing, we can either create or we can acquire a funnels agency. And we can either create or acquire, basically just partner up with a creative agency. So the creative agency can work with the funnels agency. The product brands can hire the funnels agency, can hire the creative agency. So basically what we're doing is the point of this ecosystem is, even though each entity is functioning independently, the money, the value stays in the entire ecosystem. And all of these leaders, all of these CEOs, whatever we want to call them, I tend to stay away from corporate lingo. I think That's going to be part of what this ecosystem is all about. We're going to create culture and all that stuff, and these will be other videos that I talk about. I want to get away from the corporate culture because that shit sucks. But anyway, so whatever we call these leaders are, we'll call them CEOs for now. Everyone's going to be basically incentivized to keep the money in the family, to bring money, to bring value from outside, bring it in, and then not let that money come out. And so, that's how we're going to keep on growing. So like, okay, so maybe we want to get to a point where we want to start selling some of these product brands. These product brands are pretty easy to grow into some like, a $3 million asset. That's pretty quick. Like you can do that really quick right now. But to grow it into a $10 million asset, whatever, it's like, all right, fuck it. Let's start selling some of these $10 million product brands. We can even aggregate them together and then go after, like a higher multiple and sell them. Well, it's like, okay, well, how do you sell a product brand? You have to link up with typically like a brokerage to do it. I mean, there's other ways to do it, but let's say that's the way we're going to do it. Link up with a brokerage. Well, okay, if we're going to sell about $50 million worth of product brands and giving up, like, I don't know, call it like 15% of that 50 million, that's what, $7.5 million. Like, let's not let $7.5 million leave the ecosystem. Let's instead create or acquire a brokerage. And we're going to do that by leveraging that $7.5 million. So we can poach someone or find a smaller scale brokerage where selling $50 million worth of product brands is like, really attracted to them. And that $7.5 million is really attracted to them. So now not only does that new brokerage entity that we just created or acquired get that immediate influx of $7.5 million into its own entity, meanwhile, it didn't leave the ecosystem, but that CEO also is going to get some equity in all of these other functions, including the product brand, so that individual is actually going to get even more than that $7.5 million. And see, that's worth it to the rest of us because now we have an asset. We have an additional tool, additional resource that we can continue to use to build more opportunity or to actually, I guess, either build opportunity or seize opportunity as it comes to us. And, we have another function to offer the clients that we bring in. So that's what I mean by ecosystem. Now, for a while, it's going to be built around the concept of like the product brands and the service work related to e-commerce. Or I guess I shouldn't say just e-commerce, because one support of the product brands, another entity that we would want to create is a distribution network and a sales network. I'll consider these things two separate things for now. Maybe eventually, we should merge sales plus distribution, but imagine building a really good distribution network into like grocery stores and shit like that in the US, maybe outside the US, into some emerging markets. Well, that'll also be its own little entity. Well, I shouldn't say little, that'll also be its own like pretty awesome, like massive entity. And again, as we leverage this distribution network, as the product brands do, the money still continues to stay in the ecosystem, and all of these leaders in the ecosystem will all benefit from keeping the value in the ecosystem. And from any one little part of the ecosystem growing, we all are going to benefit from it. So, as I talk about this still being kind of like product brand related, mostly e-commerce, but now you get a picture of how this can move away from e-commerce. Well, the vision doesn't stop there. It is literally, and this is where I can come in, or I will come in, like my brain, the more assets you give me, the more tools and resources you give me, whether it's financial asset, human asset, system, network, whatever the case may be, the more of these nodes, I like to call them, more nodes that are there, I can string them together in numerous ways to create value in all kinds of different ways. So for example, I'm a disabled military veteran, a disabled US military veteran. And because of that status, I get very, very high priority when it comes to bidding on government sourcing contracts. So what am I talking about there? If you guys have seen the movie War Dogs, where they are getting US government sourcing contracts for weapons and like military artillery and stuff like that. That website that they're on in War Dogs, that exists exactly as it was. That was the website. So it's basically this public website that just the government lists all of their contracts that they are wanting to hire out. And the beauty of it as being a disabled veteran is we get preferential treatment as long as I'm 51% owner or more of this function. we will get preferential treatment. We get extra points, which means we don't have to be the lowest cost bidder. And what that also means is for the gigantic contracts that like Northrop Grumman or whatever wants to bid on and they win, well, usually, actually always, those contracts have written into them that the massive contractor has to subcontract to things like, what's the phrase? Disadvantaged or whatever organizations, minority-owned organizations, and disabled veteran organizations. So as we build network with these Northrop Grumman guys and the Boeing guys and all that stuff, well, they are going to have to subcontract to disabled veterans. Boom, there we go. We also can get awarded contracts indirectly. Now, okay, how are we using this ecosystem to get these contracts? Well, we already have a 24/7 customer engagement team. Those folks would be super perfect for just going through this website. I know it's not customer engagement, but they're doing shift work and they usually have time on their hands just waiting for inquiries to come in. So this is a good project for them to fill their time. So they can just sift through this database probably like twice a week. They will be trained on understanding what sorts of contracts we are capable of executing. So for example, I was looking into this, it was actually a little while ago, probably 2 years ago, but still holds the same. I came across a Army Corps of Engineers wanted it was something like, I don't know, a couple 100,000 first aid kits assembled. So I went and basically pretended like I wanted to bid on that contract. We already have a sourcing and procurement team, supply chain team, that we could easily just be like, okay, here are the pieces that the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers wants. They want 10 Band-Aids and some tape and some gauze and whatever per first aid box. Like these are the specifications that they require. Go source the materials. So our sourcing and procurement, that's literally all the direct, at this point in time, that's all of our procurement team would need for direction. Here are the specifications, go find it. And they'd be able to do that. And then we figure out all the pricing of all the different materials. We'll get samples of maybe 100 units of each sent to our warehouse. We will ask our warehouse guys to assemble these units to clock themselves so we can get an idea of what labor cost is. We calculate the materials cost, the labor's cost, add a little bit for market fluctuation depending on how long we think this contract will last, inflation, all that stuff. We have to add a little bit in, and then boom, we submit our contract. And because I'm disabled veteran, we'll probably get the contract. And what's the beautiful, beautiful part about government sourcing contracts is you make a huge ass margin working with the US government. The downside is you don't get paid for a very long time. It is a pain in the ass to get the US government to pay you. But I'm talking if this was a $300,000 contract, it might be $40,000 in materials and labor. So a $260,000 margin on 40. So that and those are, I don't mean that's exactly a real number, but that kind of margin, I've done enough research and I've talked to enough people that are in this world. Those are the margins that we're looking at. And it's only stemming from already having some people with idle time in the Philippines that are able to do this, the sourcing and, able to go through the website and find this shit. Then passing the specifications to the procurement team, and then leveraging the warehouse that already exists, and voila, that's literally it. And now we've added a really, really valuable arm. And now going back to say you're the funnels guy, or say you have a creative agency. Well, probably not going to need to build funnels and stuff around this, although maybe we get some creative thinking. Maybe there is a reason to advertise ourselves and get out there. Actually, there probably is, because we want to attract the Northrop guys and the Boeing guys. So maybe it'll be more built around maybe going through LinkedIn and that kind of stuff. But now we're tapping our outreach and our sales team. See how it all works. But point being is totally unrelated. So it seems initially, but leveraging the ecosystem that we already have, we can build one more function that is connected to a few of those nodes already. And now, even if you are the funnels guy or the creative agency or whatever it is, you are still going to get benefit from that, because you are going to have a piece of stake in the NOVAEO entity itself, so the big entity is the NOVAEO entity, and that's going to be the entity that has a large stake in each of these small entities. So basically each small entity will be owned by the CEO of the entity and NOVAEO. And then we are all going to have some equity in NOVAEO, and we are all going to have just like a small amount of equity in each of these other little functionalities. So if you are the funnels guy, if you are the creative guy, you will still have some equity in the government sourcing contract business, and you will have some equity in the NOVAEO entity that has equity in everything, and will always have equity in everything that gets added on. So if you have equity in the NOVAEO entity, as we build and build on, you're always going to be getting more and more value created, and that's what this is all about from the financial perspective. And for me, it's really not even about the money. I sound like an arrogant prick right now, but I know I have a $1 billion brain. Like I know some billionaires. I've talked to billionaires. I've worked with billionaires. I have a billionaire brain. I'm not worried about making money for myself. It's the creation. It's the value. And ultimately, I also want to give a lot. And this will be some other videos that I do in this series. So I don't want to go too far down this path. But my point being is, like, I'm just like addicted to the creation of stuff and the value creation, the opportunity creation, and eventually being able to change the world with this entrepreneurial mindset. And I know a lot of you guys are also going to be right there with me. So I'm not saying I'm the only guy that has this type of brain. I'm not saying I'm the only guy that's making these kinds of decisions. No. Whatever your passion is, whatever your brain type is, whatever your interest is in learning other shit, this ecosystem provides it. There is no, like, you don't have to get tucked into any one thing or whatever. It's about joining the ecosystem, bringing some value instantaneously, and then just continuing to grow yourself, because if you grow yourself, then that little entity that, I keep saying little, that entity that you are responsible for is grow yourself. That entity is going to grow. If the entity grows, then the whole big picture grows. And if the big picture grows, then, the sky's the limit, or really not even. I mean, the universe is the limit. So it's pretty sweet, right? It's pretty sweet. God, I could just keep on talking about this so much, but I'm going to cut here because I'm going to try to keep these videos pretty short. Yeah. So hopefully this is pretty inspiring for you and is a good point to start some conversation. And if you're ready for some conversation, get in touch.